Well, Europeans have their own problem to worry about this point. Back in 2000, 2001, when I work about 6 months in Germany. Back then the euro economy is, people now will be shocked. Back then, the EU economy was bigger than US economy.
Yep.
There was a time when EU had the similar living standard as United States. Today, US is there, Europe is here, and this is all because the European elite who have subjugated their own people's interest to the Washington's interest, and this is only going to build up the popular discontent. This is why we're seeing like a wave of like the right-wing party coming to power in Europe. In a way, it's because when the economy goes bad, people either go left or they go right, and that's how fascism came to power in Germany in the 1920s, 1930s, because when the people are becoming increasingly disillusioned by the economic reality, and Europe is reaching that point again, especially when their leadership is so far removed from the average Europeans. They are just basically spokesmen and spokeswomen of Washington, like von der Leyen, like Baerbock, all these people being groomed from early on in the Atlantis institution to be Washington's proxy and spokesperson in Europe. And so Europe is going to be screwed. I mean, they already screwed from being cutting off on the cheap Russian gas, and now they're voting to slap tariffs on Chinese goods. One of their biggest market for German manufacturers. So this is all done at Washington's behest. So Europe is screwed, and this again, this is part of the Washington strategy, by the way. By screwing Europe, they're forcing the German industrialists to take the German factories to move them to United States. This whole plan of destabilizing the world, including their own allies. United States is not above cannibalizing its own allies to keep its own economy going. So we're going to see more of that. But with Trump at helm, it's going to be more overt, because with Biden is going to at least put on a pretense of we're all friends, we're partners. Trump will just be like, okay, pay up for your NATO dues. Pay up for your role to support the U.S. empire. So It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
And since we're on this subject, let me play this clip also about what is Yaris Yanov. He used to be a Greek finance minister. He ran for prime minister of Greece, and this is what he has to say. I'll bring it up. This will not be a clip. This will be an upload from the computer, so it'll be a little different because I'm bringing it from another platform. So I want you to listen to this. All right, let's go here.
Not in favor of the working class, but they think in Marxist terms. They understand that capitalism produces underconsumption, and American capitalism is constantly running the risk of not having enough aggregate demand for its products.
This very idea, EU as a design of the United States, is not very well known in China. For instance, I'm thinking of this with the rise of Euro for a time. And many people thought it's the Europeans' identity to show we're different from the United States. We need to have economic autonomy. And some people even say that the very breakout of the war, Kosovo War, was in one way or another the U.S. attempt to destroy the euro. And another thing is the very cause of this war against Iraq, Saddam Hussein had to do with Saddam Hussein's decision to use euro to sell its oil. So do you think this is a fair assessment, or it's completely wrong from your point of view, as the EU's relations with the United States, more boss and the vassal state, this kind of structure? Yeah.
It's an interesting hypothesis. I believe it's more complicated than that. And allow me to explain why is it more complicated. Look, the Americans didn't want to destroy the euro. The Americans were skeptical about the euro. They were saying to Europeans, what are you doing? You want to federate? Federate. But don't federate your money. Because the Americans are, whatever you may say about them, at least they are smart. And they are more practically minded. And they think globally. Germans do not think globally. They were at the time, you see, the German mindset, you have to understand, I appreciate it. They just didn't want to be a global power again because of the trauma of the defeat of Nazi Germany. They wanted one thing. And I think Chinese people understand that. They wanted to be the workshop of Europe. They wanted to make good washing machines and great propellers for your ships here in the shipyards. They wanted to make electronics. They wanted to make pharmaceuticals. They wanted to build things and make money out of that without dominating Europe or the world. That's not a bad thing. The problem is that this means you don't have an understanding of the macroeconomic conditions under which you can do it. You have to, under capitalism, you need to worry about where the demand will come. Because the problem that capitalism has, as Marxism has taught us, is that it produces under-consumption. Now, from 1945, or at least 1949, 1950, all the way to the mid-1970s and beyond, the United States created the conditions for German cars and German pharmaceuticals and German chemicals to have markets. The Germans didn't have to think about it. The Americans were managing global aggregate demand. At some point, especially after 2008, that was no longer the case. And the Germans continued not to care about managing the macroeconomy. They thought that somehow, if they produce good things, good manufactured goods, they will sell magically on the basis of how desirable they are. That's simply not understanding how capitalism works. So the Americans were looking at the euro thinking, this is going to be a problem for you folks. Think about it carefully. I have spoken to, for instance, an interesting conversation I had with Jack Lew, L-E-W. Jack Lew was the finance minister, the US Treasury Secretary of Barack Obama. He was very, very angry with Europeans, not because they had the euro, but for the same reasons I was angry with Europeans, because they were practicing austerity for the many while printing money for the many. Now, I was, from a left-wing perspective, angry with what Europe was doing. He was from an American perspective, because he understands that a Europe which was imposing austerity on the German working class, essentially is pushing American industry to boost its net exports to the United States, and therefore to export unemployment to the United States. So the American government was very angry with the European Union. One reason for the Ukraine war, one reason for essentially turning against Europe by Washington, D.C., was that the Americans wanted to teach the Europeans, and particularly the Germans, a lesson. You cannot continue to export unemployment to the United States, but just because you're not doing the right thing by your own people. And now they have won, because now the German government is completely in a state of panic. You mentioned Saddam Hussein. Let me say something about that. I don't believe that the United States invaded Iraq in the first Gulf War because of anything to do with currencies. What happened was, remember, it was 1991. As I was saying before, the difference between the United States authorities and the European authorities is the United States authorities are good Marxists, not in favor of the working class, but they think in Marxist terms. They understand that capitalism produces underconsumption, and American capitalism is constantly running the risk of not having enough aggregate demand for its products, right? So it's essentially Das Kapital turned upside down. How to use Das Kapital against the working classes of the world. But still, it's a Marxist way of thinking about it. So in 1991, the Cold War ended. If you look at the national accounts of the United States up until 1990, 1989, 1990, the military-industrial complex of the United States, and in particular, the industry that produces ammunition, cruise missiles, Pershing missiles, were accounting for up to 8% of GDP. 8% of national income was accounted for by the production of these weapons. Now, you've got to understand, and I'm sure you do, that Congress, the establishment, is not united. There are some senators that represent the armaments industry, the military-industrial complex. There are other senators who represent the medical establishment, the insurance companies, medical insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies. Now, they didn't want the money to be spent on missiles. They wanted it to be spent on them. Whenever the Pentagon brought to the Senate or to the House a bill saying we need 100 billion more, 200 billion more, 1 trillion more, they were senators who were saying no because they were representing other interests. So it's not a unified thing. While the Cold War lasted, nobody dared in the Senate speak out against the Pentagon budget. But when the Soviet Union collapsed, they did. They said, hang on a second, we no longer have an enemy. Why do we need more missiles? Why do we need more ammunition? So this is my speculative theory, that in 1991, remember there was a major recession in 1991 in America. There is a very strong causal link between the reduction in expenditure on armaments with that recession. And they needed to start spending again. Now, of course, their warehouses were full of ammunition. How do you go to the Senate and say, we need more ammunition when you've got so much? You need to spend it. So they invaded Iraq. Not only did they invade Iraq, but remember, Saddam Hussein was working for the United States. He was an ally of the United States. When Saddam Hussein, in the context in the 1980s of the war between Iran and Iraq, accidentally hit an American naval vessel and killed many American soldiers, Dick Cheney, who was working for Reagan at the time, flew to Saddam Hussein to pat him on the back and say, we know it was an accident, and to hug and be friends. So people forget that Saddam Hussein, like Noriega in Panama, was a stooge of the CIA. He worked on their behalf. He unleashed that cruel war against Iran on behalf of the United States against Ayatollah Khomeini, right? So he was their man. So they decided, okay, we sacrifice him. So they gave him a signal to take Kuwait. And why did he want to take Kuwait? Because the war that he had waged against Iran, on the orders of the United States, had been financed by Kuwait, on the orders of the United States. So the United States had said to Saddam Hussein, invade Iran, and they had said to Kuwait, give Saddam the money. Right? And when that war ended and 1 million people died, the Kuwait said to Saddam, give me the money back. And Saddam picked up the phone and said to Washington, what do you mean? I've done this on your behalf. All these people who have died. And the Americans said, oh, no, we don't care. This is between you, bilateral problem that you have with Kuwait. So he gets really across. And he stands, Kuwait is a pipsqueak thing like that. I'll take it. And the Americans, through the American ambassador in Kuwait, signaled to Saddam on purpose, provoking him. They said, the United States will not have a problem if you take Kuwait. So he takes Kuwait. And then, bang! And if this is all established fact, after the surrender of Saddam Hussein during the first Gulf War, the American Air Force was shooting Pershing and cruise missiles and all sorts of missiles into the desert to get rid of the stock so they could replenish it. At some point, Saddam Hussein gets really annoyed and says, I'm going to redenominate the Iraqi oil in euros. And that's when the Americans decided, okay, we'll take him out. So you're right, but there is a longer story which connects to the question of the crisis of American capitalism, European capitalism, and how this all interconnects.
All right. Carl, let's see if they're okay. Unmute your mic, Carl. Let me see. All right, there we are. So give me your take on this, because this has everything to do with the economy and how the service economy continues to work, called capitalism.
I mean, this actually ties to the Ukraine war right now. Ukraine war is spending a lot of shells, lots of ammunitions, which is not supplied by Ukraine's arms industry. It's supplied by U.S. armed industry, and now the U.S. industry have depleted its stockpile of ammunitions. It needs to restock, and this is, if people look at the stock price of Lockheed Martin, for example, or Raytheon, and you will look at where it's at in before February 2022 and where it's today. Or actually look at the stock price of Lockheed Martin before October 7th, 2023, and look at where it's now. It has skyrocketed because US is supplying all the ammunitions to Israel. The arms industry is literally raking it in from all the bombs that's dropped to kill Palestinian children. This is how U.S. capitalism works. The U.S. military-industrial system works. It thrives on inflicting maximum pains on people of other countries. This is why it's kind of ridiculous when people say, "Oh, U.S. is a benign hegemony." I mean, you drank the Kool-Aid, man. You drank the neoliberal Kool-Aid. And if you look at this is another reason I don't think Trump will be able to withdraw from Ukraine, and it's because it's too much profit. There's too much profit motives involved, and also added to the effect that Ukrainian war is not just about Ukraine. It's also about impoverishing Europe to the benefit of United States. Again, it's part of that lighting fire all around the world, so the money continue to come into United States. The German industries can continue to be offshore to U.S. to deindustrialize Germany. That's all part of the plan. This is why I don't think U.S. will wind down Ukraine war anytime soon. I mean, there's still much can be squeezed out of this. So I mean, the Europe. Okay, the lemon that's Europe can still be squeezed to make the lemon juice. So this is why I don't think Trump will get U.S. out of Ukraine anytime soon.
I think they wanted to make it as though they probably sue for peace, but not really, because there was a report about 2 years ago, and I talked about it on the show all last year. That came out of the Pentagon and the think tanks. They said that they believed that they only had 8 to 16 months to challenge China to prevent her from overtaking the United States in everything. And we have exceeded that time almost. So they are really fearful of a non-white, non-Western nation becoming the number one economy, the number one military. And I think this is where they believe that if we don't confront China, there's no way we can maintain our position. And I think before they really go head to head with China, I think they're gonna intensify the Middle East to weaken North African nations, to keep Syria or Iraq subjugated, and then to try to bring Iran into submission, to try to break up the BRICS, to try to weaken the Belt and Road, and that way they believe that they can live to see another day. What say you on that?
That's exactly what United States will do. I mean, this is there's not even any departure Trump administration from the Biden administration. They are Trump has always had a hard on for Iran. I mean, this is he makes no secret about it. He's the one who threw out the U.S. nuclear agreement with Iran in the first place, and he has surrounded himself with a bunch of hawks who wanted U.S. to wage war against Iran. I mean, Iran has always been on target, but again, Iran is not Iraq. Iran is a much more larger country, much larger economy. Iraq was isolated back in 1991. I mean, people probably don't remember this, but in 1991, there were Syrian battalions that was part of the U.S. coalition to go inside Kuwait. Saddam has pissed off sufficiently people around in his region that U.S. was able to build up a big coalition against you. I'm talking about the first Gulf War, not the coalition of the willing of the of the George W. Bush, right? That's a farce. But the first Persian Gulf War, there was Syrian battalions, on the fighting with the U.S. against Iraq. And this is always, but Iran is a much bigger country. It has more powerful friends. He actually has a backing of Russia and China. So this is not gonna. I mean, if U.S. does wage a war on Iran, it will turn out disastrous. It would be, if you think Iraq war was bad for U.S., this is going to be 10 times worse. I mean, the countless, U.S. Navy can't even deal with Houthis in Red Sea. They think they can take on Iran. I mean, Iran had. Where did all the Yemeni missiles come from? Iran supplied them. Iran has more those in stock. So I mean, U.S. navies in Persian Gulf and U.S. bases in Persian Gulf, they will be sitting ducks for those missiles. And so I don't think it will turn out well. But I will be interested to see how far U.S. is willing to take this confrontation with Iran. Again, a lot of things up in air right now, but I think in the first couple months, U.S. there will be utter chaos inside the U.S. deep state, U.S. institutions, because they're going to see which piece going to fall in the new Trump administration. So I don't expect much to take place in the first couple months. But after that, we'll have to see back, in March, around the March time, that it will be interesting to see how U.S. foreign policy will shape up.
I believe, and we'll close it out in a second. I know he has diaper duty, and I don't want to keep him longer. He's given us 2 hours of his time. He'll be back on the platform, everybody. So don't worry about it. This is my guy right here. But America, Carl. Desperation breeds desperate actions and irrational thought, and the economy is collapsing. I mean, at breakneck speed. Her position internationally is receding and collapsing. Her military is stretched, and she sees Russia as a rival reemerging. She sees Iran establishing itself, and she sees the one thing that she does not want to see out of all of that: China supersedes her in everything, and that, in my eyes, will be the linchpin for regional conflagration in the MENA region, the Middle East and North African region. And I'm not talking about a year from now, because they've been throwing everything up against the wall and nothing is stuck. And so they are feeling that if we just continue to do this, we're going to lose out. But if we do something, we're going to lose out. So it's better to do something and lose out than to not do something and be like, oh, we should have tried this and tried that. So I believe they're going to let everything out of their genie bottle to try to prevent China from, well, it's already overtaken it, but cementing itself as the number one economy. And I think they're going to try to prevent anything that can from stopping Iran from cementing itself as a major linchpin in the Belt and Road. Because remember, Iran sits in West Asia, which is a route to Africa, which is a route to Europe, which is a route to the Mediterranean, and that to have China to have access to all of that stuff, I think desperation sets in and war comes about.
I think one industry in the United States is going to boom in the next 4 years. That's the copium industry. It's going to go through the roof because they will find out nothing they can do is going to stop China's rise. So the copium production is gonna intensify. You know, we're gonna see copium everywhere. That's what we're looking forward to, guys.
Hey, Carl, my guy, thank you for joining me on this episode, man. You know we got to do another one real soon for everybody, man. Hey, send my love to your family. Be safe and be blessed out there, my brother.
Peace.
Mm-hmm. All right, peace. Everybody, thank you all for joining us on another edition of the Red Pill Diaries. Again, I really enjoyed the show. I always enjoy Carl, and my mom and my baby daughter. That's their favorite person, guest on the show. And Carl is really a co-host from time to time on the show. So I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me on the most powerful platform for truth, bar none, anywhere on God's green earth. And I want to say to you all right now, have a safe and blessed weekend. Always remember to treat others as you would have them to treat you, and do right by others, not because there's any gain for you or because anybody's watching, but do right to others because it's the right thing to do. Because even when no one else is watching, God Almighty is always watching you. Remember that. I love you all from the bottom of my heart to the depth of my soul, but the love that I have for you will always pale in comparison to the love that God has for you. Until we next speak again, stay strong, stay true, but above all things, stay righteous. Hey, mama, your baby boy loves you more than life. Deuces, everybody. Thank you all for joining me. We're out of here. Peace.